Today's story is about a stupid boy living in a small village, whom people considered a fool, but destiny had written something big for him. One day when he goes fishing, he finds a magical fish that can cure any of his 3 poisons. And this is where the story of the boy's true destiny begins. While his journey would have been easier with each poison, life became a little more complicated. Now we will see in today's story how that magical fish helps him by becoming a girl. So hello friends, my name is Ishita and the story begins in a different land deep in the ocean where the king of fishes asks his loyal spy frog, "Where has the fish I want to marry disappeared to?" The frog said fearfully, "Your Majesty, there's no trace of him." Hearing this, the king angrily said, "Start searching for him in every corner of the world and bring him to me." The scene then shifts to a small, snowy village in Russia where a blind blacksmith lives. Inside, his son, Emelya, is asleep but his dog awakens him. Emelya, a pure-hearted and somewhat naive boy, quietly tries to leave the house. His father, working at the furnace, understands and says, "Son, you should learn this blacksmithing trade too. How long will I live?" Emelya says, "Okay, sir, I'll learn quickly." At his behest, he takes a bucket and fork and heads for the frozen river. He sits down and begins to fish, but suddenly, water gushes up like a fountain, and a fish lands in his bucket. Emelya is overjoyed that today he has finally found his feet. The meal was arranged without any effort. He then returned home and began preparing to cook the fish. Just then, a voice from behind asked, "What are you looking for?" Emelya was astonished to see that the fish could speak. "If you release me back into the river, I will grant you any 3 wishes." Emelya initially didn't believe his words. Nevertheless, he made his first wish. "I wish I could travel around the town without leaving my furnace." As he said this, the house suddenly began to shake, and slowly, the whole house rose. Emelya was terrified. Suddenly, his furnace began to move like a cart, and he literally emerged from the village. The fish said, "Just as you said you wanted to travel around without leaving your furnace, so the furnace is going with you." Emelya couldn't believe his first wish had been fulfilled. Then, after stopping in a place, the cold uttered, "I wish the weather would be warm with greenery all around." Greenery spreads through the snow, and the cold gives way to a gentle, warm breeze, melting the ice beneath, revealing a river. The fish says, "You've finished 2 of your poisons, and only 1 is left." Emelya is perplexed, having wasted 2 of them. The fish retorts, "Everyone only asks for what is within their means." Emelya then begins to move forward with the fish. Just then, some robbers block his path and snatch the bucket from his hand. Emelya runs with the bucket to save the fish, and all the robbers chase after him, but he manages to evade them and quickly releases the fish into the river to keep it safe. However, the robbers seize him and, in a rage, hang him upside down from a tree and leave. A short while later, a beautiful girl arrives, unties the rope, and lowers Emelya down. Emelya initially doesn't recognize her, but when asked her name, she reveals her name is Vasilisa. Only then does Emelya understand. Noticing the shining scarf on her shoulder, he tells her that this is the same magical fish he released into the water. He immediately takes her scarf to prevent her from escaping and says, "I still have one last wish, which I will use at the right time." Vasilisa asks what he wants next. He replies, "I want to marry Princess Anfisa, the daughter of the Russian Tsar, and instead of asking for a wish, I will work hard myself, and you will support me." Vasilisa agrees to join him. We are then shown the king's magnificent palace. Princess Anfisa's maid arrives and informs us that the English ambassador is arriving with an invitation. Hearing this, Anfisa is overjoyed, as she has always wanted to marry an Englishman, so she quickly gets ready and sits down. The ambassador arrives and presents the princess with an umbrella to appease her. However, the king dislikes the English at all and wants his daughter to marry a true and kind man. But before the king can refuse, the ambassador says, "Your Majesty, I have a special gift for you. I brought you a gift that will make you very happy." Meanwhile, Emelya and Vasilisa, also near the palace walls, are secretly watching all this. The ambassador shows the king a machine, claiming it plays music automatically, but in reality, one of his own men is hidden inside, playing music at the push of a button. The king tells him, "We don't need such a machine." Princess Anfisa has fallen in love with the Englishman, and the king is at a loss for how to convince his daughter. Just then, Emelya comes running and says, "Your Majesty, there's no need to marry the princess to an Englishman. I'll bring you a machine that will play music just by speaking." The king, delighted, says, "If you can do that, you can ask for whatever you want." Emelya immediately asks, "Will you let me marry the princess?" The king smiles and says, "If you succeed, I'll definitely arrange the marriage." But the princess begins to persuade her father to marry the Englishman, but the king ignores her words and orders his servants to buy Emelya new clothes and shoes. They should be given to her so she can continue her journey. Emelya happily comes out and tells Vasilisa everything. Vasilisa says that the device exists in this world, but it's not easy to find. It's in the dark forest with a dangerous cat. Whoever went to get it never returned. Emelya is a little scared, but she's ready to face any hardship to get it. Vasilisa agrees to accompany her, and and they set off towards the dark forest. On the way, Vasilisa explains that the cat is very dangerous. If it plays a happy song, the person in front falls exhausted from dancing, and the cat eats them. If it plays a sad song, the listener falls asleep crying, and the same fate befalls them. Now, upon reaching a certain point, Vasilisa says that from here on, you must go alone, after which Emelya proceeds alone into the terrifying forest where heaps of bones and skeletons lie everywhere. Then suddenly a voice calls out, "These skeletons here belong to those who came to take my musical instrument. Do you want it too?" Emelya fearlessly replies, "Yes." Villa laughs. "Okay, if you can control yourself after listening to my song, then this instrument will be yours. Now tell me, will you listen to a sad song or a happy one?" Emelya chooses a sad song, so Villa plays the instrument and begins to sing. Villa was elated, thinking he would hunt Emelya down as soon as she fell asleep, but surprisingly, Emelya just cries a little and then starts singing the next line of the song. Villa, surprised, asks, "How do you know this?" Emelya smiles and says, "My mother used to sing this same song when I was a child. That's why it didn't affect me much." Villa loses the bet and instead starts crying, "If you take this instrument, I'll starve to death." Hearing this, Emelya opens her bag and gives Villa food. After eating a full meal for the first time, the cat happily declares, "Now this instrument is yours, and from today on, I will also live with you, because I have become your friend." Vasilisa, sitting on the riverbank, waits. Just then, the Fish King's spy, the frog, arrives and says, "The Fish King is looking everywhere to marry you." Hearing this, she angrily refuses, saying, "Go and tell him I will never marry him." Just then, Emelya arrives with the cat and the instrument, and overhears the frog's entire conversation. Vasilisa is delighted to find the instrument, and they both begin their journey. On the way, Emelya asks about the Fish King, and Vasilisa says, "I don't love him, so I left." Next, we see a scene at the king's palace, where the English ambassador has disguised himself as the Italian ambassador. Princess Anfisa is delighted to recognize him, but before he can ask the king for Anfisa's hand, Emelya arrives with a cat and the magical instrument, and tells the cat, "Let's play a happy song." As the music plays, the king begins to sing. Everyone in the court, from the king down, begins to dance, unable to stop themselves, and just as everyone collapses to the ground in agony, Emelya calls on the cat to stop the singing. Seeing this, the king, astonished, exclaims, "This is a wonderful instrument. I am very happy, and now this cat and the instrument will live in our palace." Emelya reminds the king of the marriage condition, and he happily agrees, but Anfisa still wants to marry the Englishman. She tells Emelya, "If you really want to marry me, then prove something to me that shows you can do anything for me. I'll tell you what that task will be tomorrow." The naive Emelya, taken by his words, smiles and agrees. Then he goes to Vasilisa and says, "The princess has agreed to the marriage, but for that I will have to do one more task." Vasilisa smiles and congratulates him, but the princess, on the other hand, has a new trick. She goes into a dark room in the palace and finds a mirror. On the mysterious chair, Anfisa summons her mother's evil spirit. As soon as the spirit appears, Anfisa says, "I want to give Emelya a task that she can never complete so that I can be rid of her forever." Smiling, her mother tells her a difficult task. The next day, in court, the ambassador shows the king a machine and says, "This machine is a modern mixer machine. If you put vegetables in it, it will automatically chop them, and if you put fruit in it, it will automatically extract juice." In reality, there's a man hidden inside doing all this, but from the outside, it appears to be a magical machine. Meanwhile, Anfisa approaches the king and asks if Emelya can create something that serves itself. The king says he's heard of such magical tablecloths in stories, but he's never seen one. Anfisa cleverly says, "If Emelya brings me that magical tablecloth, I'll marry her." Now, according to the princess's new condition, Emelya and Vasilisa set out in search of the magical tablecloth. On their way, they find it. Vasilisa explains that the tablecloth belongs to two brothers named Satser and Afanasy. Years ago, they left the village to live in the mountains. They could find food and drink while sitting. They became so lazy that they couldn't even walk. While chatting, they stopped for dinner at the home of an elderly couple. The house is simple, but there's true love in them. As they leave, Vasilisa smiles and says, "Love between two people should be like a needle and thread. One is incomplete without the other." Continuing their journey, they pass through lush green fields and finally reach the mountainous region where, among the high cliffs, the two stout brothers sit with a magical tablecloth in front of them. At their very mention, the magical tablecloth instantly brings forth a wealth of delicious food, and they both eat to their heart's content. Emelya and Vasilisa watch from a distance, and when the brothers tire of eating, Emelya comes to them and says, "This is it? Give me the tablecloth." Hearing this, the two brothers, enraged, smash him on the head with a coconut, knocking him unconscious. Vasilisa arrives to wake Emelya and tells them to look at their faces in the water. When they see their faces in the water, they are shocked, as they had grown as fat as buffaloes from years of eating and drinking. Feeling sorry for themselves, they ask Vasilisa, "How can we ever be like before?" Vasilisa replies, "If you really want this, you must first get rid of this magical tablecloth. As long as you have it, you'll never be able to work hard. Hearing this, the two brothers embarrassingly say, "You're right, take it." Vasilisa takes the tablecloth and somehow manages to escape with Emelya. Emelya regains consciousness, and upon seeing the tablecloth, she is overjoyed that she has finally fulfilled her promise. On the way back, Emelya finds flowers from the flower garden for the princess. When he begins to break down, Vasilisa asks, "Why don't you understand that Anfisa does and want to marry you? She always gives you tasks you say and do." But Emelya, in her innocence, says, "No, Anfisa, it's not like that. Just do this once and everything will be fine." Seeing Emelya's kindness, Vasilisa falls in love with her, but despite her best efforts, she can't express her feelings. Afterward, when Emelya arrives in the kingdom with a magical tablecloth, everyone cheers for her. The king proudly declares, "Look, now she's made her way into the hearts of the people." But Anfisa's anger is clearly evident on her face. She asks her mother spirit again, "What should I do now?" With a terrifying smile, she reveals a terrifying plan. The next day, in court, Anfisa declares, "I'm ready to marry Emelya, but before that I want her to go to the dark world and get my mother's permission to marry me." The king is shocked to hear this. He goes, because it's impossible to return alive from the dark world. But Emelya, as is his habit, agrees without thinking. Then he meets Vasilisa, who explains that going there is like stepping into the mouth of death. Emelya simply smiles, saying, "Why fear death when your intentions are clear?" The next day, he leaves and first goes to visit his blind father. Hearing his voice, his father says, "Son, you're alive. I can't even find you because my eyes can't see." Hearing this, Emelya's eyes fill with tears. He apologizes to his father and, seeking his blessings, sets off on his journey. On the way, he tells Vasilisa, "I wasted 2 poisons in vain, but now I want the 3rd poison so much that my father can see again." Hearing this, Vasilisa's magic restores his father's sight. They reach the riverbank where they are about to embark. Emelya returns the magical scarf with a fish and frees Vasilisa because she had used all 3 poisons. But Vasilisa says, "I can't leave you alone in this trouble because we're incomplete without each other, like a needle and thread." Emelya doesn't understand this hint, and their journey begins. After traveling some distance down the river, they see large statues all around. Vasilisa says, "This is where the dark area begins." They stop the boat and descend into a valley. Hearing the voice of the protector of this area, Emelya panics, but Vasilisa says, "He came with me, father." Emelya is shocked. "How can this be your father?" The protector says, "Yes, I am his father. I transformed him from a fish into a human in search of a true companion." Vasilisa tells her father everything and asks him for help. After hearing everything, he says the queen tortured the innocent for greed and power, and that's why she has been starved for eternity. Then they summon the queen's spirit, and it appears in its terrible form. Emelya steps forward and says, "I have come to ask for permission to marry your daughter." But the queen spirit says, "I will never allow my daughter to marry a poor man." Seeing this, Vasilisa's father tells the queen, "You have suffered the torture of hunger for centuries. If you give me permission to marry, I can give you food." The queen, unable to resist the sight of the food in front of her, gives her permission. Then we see a scene in the palace where everyone is eating. Suddenly, the queen's spirit appears like smoke on a tray placed on the table and declares to everyone, "I give my permission to this marriage." The king is delighted that Emelya has truly accomplished what no human being could. But Anfisa becomes angry. Here, in the dark world, Vasilisa thanks her father and then begins to return with Emelya. On the way, she smiles and says, "Now your most difficult task is complete. You will find your princess, and now you will forget me too. You will go, because those who return alive from here must lose all magical memories." Emelya says to herself, "Forgetting you is beyond my power, nor do I ever want to forget you." Meanwhile, Anfisa, enraged, enters the room and begins to break the mysterious chair. Her mother's spirit stops her and says, "I was forced to give Emelya permission. He wasn't alone. All his success is thanks to a magical fish, and you know that using magic in our kingdom is punishable by death." Hearing this, she understands what she must do with Emelya. It's morning on the riverbank, and the boat docks, but as Emelya opens his eyes, all memories of Vasilisa are erased from his mind, and he doesn't even recognize her. Vasilisa says, "I'm just a boatman taking you across the river." Emelya steps off the boat and starts to leave, but he feels as if he's forgotten something very important. Then he approaches Anfisa and he says, "I completed all your tasks, but now I seem to have fallen in love with someone else." Anfisa slyly asks, "Did you do all this alone?" Emelya replies, "No, perhaps some magical power helped me every time." Hearing this, Anfisa summons soldiers and orders Emelya to be captured. The next day, she is blindfolded in front of everyone, and it is announced that Emelya used magic to obtain the princess. Therefore, she is sentenced to death. Emelya is heartbroken that the one for whom she risked her life wants to kill her. The king remains silent, forced to remain silent. But just as the soldiers are about to open fire, Vasilisa arrives. She tells Anfisa to release kiss her. In exchange for her lifelong servitude, I will grant you any 3 wishes. Then, she hands Anfisa her magical scarf. Anfisa's eyes sparkle, and she pardons Emelia's punishment. But now, her pride grows even greater, and she, by making a wish, she sways all the people to her side, imprisons her father, and declares herself the new queen. Then, with another poison, she demands that the Prince of England come to her with a marriage proposal. Thanks to Vasilisa's magic, English soldiers arrive in no time with the prince's proposal. Seeing this, the ambassador says, "You wanted to marry me." Anfisa replies, "Put this poor man to work in the palace. Now I will marry the prince, not the ambassador." Meanwhile, Emelya returns home. Cicero and Afanassy are also present, now recovered from their hard work. Emelia's father says, "Last time you came here with Vasilisa," but Emelya can't remember anything. Then, Emelya notices the needle and thread in Cicero's hand, and after a moment of careful observation, all her memories return. He sets out to find Vasilisa, accompanied by his father Cicero and Afanassy, who take their furnace to the palace to help him. Upon arriving, they break down the palace gate. Emelya immediately rushes to Vasilisa's presence and says, "It took me too long to understand your love, but now I'm here to take you." Just then, Anfisa arrives with her soldiers, declaring that this girl is now her slave. Emelya declares that if she isn't freed, she will incite your soldiers against you. But Anfisa laughs arrogantly, saying, "You can't harm me." Then, she asks Vasilisa for her third and final wish. "Make me a witch just like you." Vasilisa fulfills the wish without delay, but Anfisa herself transforms into a fish and falls into a bucket. Seeing this, everyone laughs, thinking the princess has made a fool of herself, and she cries out, "Turn me back to me quickly." Vasilisa replies, "The magic fish fulfills not its own wishes, but those of others, and you, lured by the magic poison, turned yourself into a fish." Just then, the king of the fishes emerges and, mistaking Anfisa for Vasilisa, takes her with him forever. Then, the palace descends. Everything returns to peace and happiness. The king returns to his people, and Emelya approaches Vasilisa and kisses her. She is overjoyed, knowing her search for a true companion is over. And with this, the story ends. So, friends, I hope you enjoyed this story.